Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
'87 Sports Fans Live. It's the NFL Hour, kids. Keith Grieve and Steve Taylor from 87sportsfans.com, joined by Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com. As always, you wouldn't have it any other way. I know. So,
yeah, you know, I love putting myself through that last half hour. Every opportunity I get. I'm kidding. It was great.
Wow.
Good times. Noodle set.
It was good times.
Good thing I don't have any pride left. Jeez. Anyway.
Any what?
It's a good thing I don't have any pride left.
Yeah, it is a good thing, actually.
Just emaciated us.
Keith, you never had pride.
I know. I'm not proud.
You know,
of it.
I went back and forth on that last topic, but I'm just like I could never. If Jameis Winston were my client, he would never be throwing at the combine. I just think it would be a ridiculous situation. I've seen quarterbacks throw at the regional combines, and it's just awful for them to throw at guys they're not used to. They are so not in sync.
No, and I agree with that side because you will cost these guys millions of dollars, but just go out and throw it out. The fact that if anybody holds it against you, do you really want to play for them anyway? I don't know.
It doesn't. Well, no, but they don't get a choice. They get drafted, and then they're slotted their contracts now. So, I mean, it's not like they could put up a fight or refuse. I mean, I suppose they don't have to show up, but, you know, don't see that happening.
Right. All right.
Anyway.
So let's talk Atlanta Falcons here in the offseason. And what happened to the Falcons last year? A little brief season recap. If you remember, 2013, the Falcons were decimated by injuries all year long, and therefore they didn't hit any of their expectations that anybody had for them. But this year was supposed to be different. Everyone was supposed to be healthy. Everyone was supposed to be good, happy. And it started with an overtime win over the Saints. Then they went and they lost to the Bengals 24-10 on the road. Then they beat the Buccaneers at home 56-14. Okay, well, maybe things are looking good. And then they went on a 5-game losing streak going into their bye. They lost at Minnesota. They lost at New York. They lost at home to the Bears. They lost at Baltimore. And they lost at home to the Detroit Lions by 1 point. Then they head into their bye week. They beat Tampa Bay on the road to go to 3-6. They beat the Carolina Panthers in Carolina to go to 4-6. Then they go to Cleveland and they lose by 2 to the Browns. Then they beat Arizona at home. And then they lose to the Packers in Green Bay by 6 points. They lose to Pittsburgh at home by 7 points. They lose at New Orleans, they beat New Orleans in Week 16, 30-14, 6-9, and then get absolutely destroyed by the Panthers in Week 17, 34-3. Mike Smith gets fired. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. The Falcons finished middle. The Falcons finished. Testing. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Oh, I hear you. You were breaking in and out.
Yeah, you were breaking in and out, but I got you.
Okay. The Falcons finished rated in the middle of the road at Pro Football Focus on offense and on defense in the lower third of the league. So where do they go from here, kids, is the real aspect. If you're thinking about where they need to focus in the draft, Jim, what's your take on Atlanta? Where do they go from here?
Wow, there's just a very vague and open question there.
Well, if you're the GM of the Falcons and you got a new head coach, Dan Quinn, coming over from Seattle, what areas are you looking at first to put your first building blocks in here?
Well, I'm first looking to rebuild my defense because that defense was just got awful last year, and it's been struggling the last couple of years. I would likely, and I think the former Seahawks defensive coordinator would agree, that if anyone's over 30 years old, they're probably not going to stay on the team the following season. I would look for speed. I would want a defensive end, a defensive tackle. If I could find somebody to I think they're keeping last year's middle linebacker, aren't they? I think Sean Witherspoon is staying.
I believe so, yes.
I believe so. So you're going to possibly draft one or two outside linebackers, one to start, one to sit on the bench. And there's going to be Byron Maxwell is going to be available. I'm running out and signing him as soon as free agency opens, and I'm bringing him aboard, one of my former players. So very quickly, I think they can turn things around. They have a bunch of cap space. They've got roughly $22 to $23 million that they'll be able to spend, and that's before they've cut anybody. I don't expect Steven Jackson back. I think Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator is going to make this team a good team. I mean, offensively they should be fine. You don't have to change any of the playmakers. You might need a running back. I question whether Devonta Freeman has what it takes to last an entire season in terms of his size. But if you have to roll with him and Antone Smith, so be it. Antone Smith had a tremendous season if they allowed him to play more. And that's what I would do.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Steve, go ahead. You go.
No, I mean, I agree with Jim. I mean, you have no running game and an atrocious defense, so both of them need to be looked at. Because you look at the rest of their offense. I mean, you're still going to have Matt Ryan, who's proved that he's, I don't know if I want to throw the elite word, but he's near there. He's a very, very good quarterback who at times can make stupid mistakes. But you still have Roddy White, who might not have the speed he used to have, but he still is a solid receiver. You have Julio Jones. Even Devin Hester last year played better. You have the weapons on offense.
I was going to say one of the things that they've been missing is that great tight end that they had in Anthony Gonzalez. And if they could get Julius Thomas or Tony Gonzalez, if they could get Julius Thomas, oh my God, this offense would be just tremendously good. If you look at Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator, he comes from Gary Kubiak, the Gary Kubiak sort of coaching tree, and Kubiak comes from, I want to say it's the Buccaneers, but I'm not positive of that, so don't hold me to it. But their systems run offensively on a one-cut zone running game or running scheme or whatever you want to call it, that favors players like an Alfred Morris, an Arian Foster, and then they seem to always have one receiver that just they go to, constantly. Whether it was Andre Johnson for the Texans, who, by the way, in 2008, 2009, when Shanahan was the offensive coordinator there, Johnson, I believe, each season had over, I want to say it was 150 receptions. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of catches. Just crazy. And then Pierre Garçon just lit it up the last two seasons. Or no, I'm sorry, it was over 100 receptions. Excuse me, 150, that's nuts. And then Pierre Garçon, same thing. Prior to this past season, Garçon was just a target monster. So that's sort of what you're going to see. So in fantasy, for any fantasy people out there, Julio Jones should still remain a top draft pick. And now suddenly, depending whether it's Devonta Freeman that's going to be carrying the load or if they draft somebody, let's say, what's his name from Indiana, Tevin Coleman, that's who you could suddenly look at and say, wow, this is a running back whose arrow is pointing straight on up.
I agree with you about Steven Jackson and him needing to go. If he's cut before June 1st, they don't really get any kind of cap relief at all. So I don't know what their course of action is going to be, whether they're willing to eat it or whatnot. I don't know. I'm not willing to say. But you look at what they really were atrocious at, and they were atrocious on the interior line, run blocking, and they were even worse in pass coverage in the secondary. Now, that's a tricky wicket for a new head coach because your starting corners at the end of the season last year were two rookies. Second-year players, Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford, both first and second-round picks in 2013. So whether or not you feel there's an upgrade available, whether you feel they have the talent and it was just a matter of scheme last year and coaching, that Dan Quinn is obviously more than qualified to make that call. So another area of concern, their pass and Mike is playing games with me here. The other area of concern for the Atlanta Falcons is their ability to rush the passer. And you think about where Dan Quinn came from in Seattle. One thing they really did really well was get to the quarterback with 4 and without blitzing, as little as possible anyway. And he really doesn't have anything going on there right now. Croy Bierman and Jonathan Babineau on the ends really didn't light anybody up. Tyson Jackson wasn't a bad pickup coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs in the offseason. But if you're the Falcons, you either have to focus on interior offensive line or your secondary. And if you don't like any of your options at that point, then you look at your defensive line as far as pass rushers go. And that, I think, is step one to getting this team back. Like I said before, when I was talking about the areas of an offense that you can't compensate for. You can compensate for a less than stellar running back, and whether it's Jaquiz Rogers, he might be a free. I think he's a free agent. I think I saw that. And Devontae Freeman or Antone Smith, whoever it is back there, all those guys rated pretty positively overall last year, by the way. But if you have an offensive line that can open up holes, then it doesn't really matter how good those guys are back there. But they don't have that line right now, which ironically is kind of the line as far as their execution-wise is similar to what Quinn saw in Seattle this year. But they had Marshawn Lynch, who is more than capable of making his own holes and just beating people up. You don't have that in Atlanta right now. So you start with the offensive line. You build from the lines and work out. So if I'm the regime in Atlanta,